All right. Just to sort of review where we are in this unit, we're going to keep this in the taxonomy unit. And so we studied taxonomy, sort of how we organize living things. Then we started getting into some more specifics about the Protus kingdom. Then we talked about the plant kingdom. And now we're moving in and talking about the animal kingdom. And we're going to go into some more detail about different types of animals and different adaptations that they have and different characteristics. So it'll take us a couple of weeks to finish this unit. We'll have several quizzes though along the way. Like we'll have a quiz on invertebrates, and then we'll have a quiz on vertebrates and so forth.
When would that be next week?
So before we get to specifically talking about inverts, let's talk about animals in general. So in the animal kingdom, what are the terms you could use to describe animals? You know, there was those terms we used when we were talking about each of the kingdoms. Give me one term you could use, Bella. They're multicellular. What's another one? Jasmine? They're eukaryotes, meaning their cells have a nucleus inside of them. And then there's one more term. Madison? Heterotroph. They're heterotrophs. They need to eat other organisms to get energy. So those are the terms we use to describe all animals. So every animal has all of those characteristics. And there is a large variety of different types of organisms that are animals. Lots of different body plans, lots of different ways of obtaining nutrients, and lots of different habitats and so forth. There's a large variety of animals. And we kind of talk about them in two categories. The vertebrates, which are the animals with the backbone, and the invertebrates, which are the animals that don't have a backbone. All of the vertebrates are in one single phylum, chordate. But the invertebrates, they are in a whole bunch of different phylum. So what's that?
Frog.
Yeah, that's a frog. Is it a vertebrate or invertebrate?
Vertebrate.
Does it have a backbone?
Yes, I can see it.
It does. It's a vertebrate. It's an amphibian. All amphibians are vertebrates. What's that?
No.
Invertebrate.
Invertebrate. Vertebrate.
Let's think.
Vertebrate.
Nope.
No.
Invertebrate. Lobster is an invertebrate. It doesn't have a backbone. It has an exoskeleton, but not a skeleton inside of it.
Oh, that's
Vertebrate.
cute. Vertebrate.
Yeah, that's a vertebrate.
It looks a bit stuffed
That
in.
is cute.
Seriously,
Is
right?
That is cute.
That's cute. All right. Now, before we get into this, because when we talk about invertebrates, one of the things we'll talk about are their symmetry. Now, you guys have learned about symmetry in the past, right?
No.
Probably in math.
Yeah.
We
Like
haven't gotten like
Spheres.
could be. Could probably
Spheres.
in-
Spheres.
Yeah, in art maybe. Yeah, so symmetry is about the sort of organization of a living thing. How are its body parts sort of arranged? Are they arranged sort of with two equal halves? Are they arranged in a circular pattern, and they're just arranged sort of randomly? And we have three terms that we use when we're talking about symmetry. We can use the term asymmetry, bilateral, or radial symmetry. So asymmetry, does anyone have an idea what that might mean? Asymmetry?
Maybe just like aligned.
That's going to be another type, actually. Okay. Asymmetry actually means it doesn't really have a symmetry. It doesn't have any real pattern to how it's set up. You know, if you just draw kind of a random shape like this little shape, that is asymmetrical. It doesn't have symmetry. I can't sort of split it into equal halves. It's just random.
Like the thing we looked at.
Amoeba?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly like amoeba. Another term we would use is bilateral symmetry. What does the prefix bi mean?
Two.
Two. Lateral means side.
So they're both one.
This is two-sided symmetry, two equal sides. Imagine here like Homer Simpson. Is bilateral symmetry.
Oh my god.
Two equal sides, right? An eye on each side, an ear on each side, a nostril on each side, half teeth on each side.
Doesn't everyone
That's
do?
bilateral symmetry.
Like if you do that with your whole body, what would you
Yeah, the overall pattern is the same. So, you know, sometimes people would say, well, you know,
left foot?
my right eye is a little bit higher than my left eye, or, you know, my ear on my right side is pierced, not my left side. So it doesn't mean identical. It means the overall pattern. I have an eye on each side and ears, so the overall is two equal sides. And then the third type is something called radial symmetry. What do you think radial symmetry means?
More than one.
Roman?
More than two?
Well, yeah, it does mean more than two. In fact, it doesn't? Six
Like,
sides.
No, it has
Does
six.
it go this way?
No. Oh, it could go several ways. That's like what Rome was saying. It's organized in a circular pattern. Like this flower. It has circular symmetry. It has radial symmetry. The petals are organized in a circular way. I could draw a line straight up and down, or left to right, or diagonal, and all of those lines would split it into equal parts. It's kind of like spokes on a wheel. That's circular radial symmetry. Yeah. So let's look at some examples. This beetle, for example. Raise your hand and tell me, what type of symmetry does that beetle have? Ken?
Bilateral.
Bilateral. It has one line down the middle, which splits it into two equal sides. Now this sea anemone here, you have to kind of imagine it from above, looking at it from above with those tentacles. What type of symmetry would that be? Avery? Radial. That those tentacles come out kind of like spokes in a wheel, all from one central area. And then this is a sponge. What would you say about the sponge, Destiny?
That is,
Asymmetry, correct. It's not, there's no real pattern. It's not organized in any real way. It's just kind of randomly shaped. That's asymmetry.
that looks like a coral.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like a sponge.
All right, a few more examples. Okay. This cat. What type of symmetry does a cat have, Madison? Bilateral. It has two sides. If you sort of draw a line down the middle, we have equal sides. Whiskers on both sides, eyes, ears. It has bilateral symmetry. How about this spider? Raise your hand. Tyler?
Bilateral.
Also bilateral, yes. And Destiny, how about this one? The amoeba.
Is asymmetry.
Yeah, asymmetry. It doesn't have any pattern. That's the one you asked about earlier. This is a sea urchin. We'll learn about him today. What type of symmetry would you say the sea urchin has? Garrett?
Radial.
Radial. Yeah, these spikes are sort of arranged in a circular pattern. It has radial symmetry. We're going to look at one of these later this week. This is a planaria, a flatworm. Roman, what kind of symmetry does that have?
Bilateral.
Yeah, bilateral. You can draw a line right down the middle, and you have equal sides. Roman?
Like for the sea urchin, that couldn't it be radial and bilateral?
Yeah, if it has radial, by definition, it also has bilateral, but we could say radial.
Okay.
Anyone ever seen one of these?
Yeah.
Maybe in the ocean, on the beach?
What is it?
You know what they're called?
Horseshoe crab.
Yeah, horseshoe crab. What type of symmetry does this horseshoe crab have, Madison?
Bilateral.
Bilateral.
What is it?
Bilateral? It's a horseshoe crab. They grow pretty big. They come up on the shore from the ocean sometimes. You see them on the East Coast, like Delaware and just like this. You know what this is?
Yeah.
A flower.
It's called a sand dollar. What type of it's actually an animal. We'll talk about it. What type of symmetry does that have, Jasmine? Radial symmetry. Okay. several ways to divide it up. It's coming out like spokes on a wheel. And finally, how about the starfish? Okay?
What? Radial?
Yes, radial. And so as we talk about our different groups of invertebrates, we'll mention sort of what type of symmetry they typically have. So if I were to ask you to think about an animal, just think of an animal. Most likely, you're thinking of a vertebrate, right?
Yeah.
No.
No.
No?
Yes.
Oh,
Like a
wait,
dog, or
sorry.
a bear, or
Yeah.
a mammal,
Wait,
a reptile, a bird.
Vertebrate is.
Has a backbone.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, but actually, 95% of all animals are invertebrates. So most animals, the vast majority of animals that have been identified are invertebrates. Only 5% are vertebrates. But we kind of think about vertebrates when we think about animals. And they go from things that are very, very simple, like this sponge, which we'll talk about in a minute, to things that are much more complex, like a crab or a lobster or an octopus. Those are much more complex invertebrates, but they all are invertebrates. So we're going to talk about several different phylum of invertebrates. Okay? We'll talk about them one at a time. There's not really much for you to write down here. I just want to talk and show you some pictures about them and explain a little bit about each of these groups. Now this first one you probably have seen but never really thought it was an animal. It's called, the phylum is called Porifera, and these are the sponges. And it's called Porifera because their body has lots of pores or holes in it that they use when they're eating. These are things that are filter feeders. You know what that term means, a filter feeder? Anyone know what that one means? Isaiah? Yeah, it means it sucks water in through these pores, and as the water is going through, it filters out little bits of plants or animals that it uses for food, and then it squeezes the rest of the water out. And that's how they get nutrition, they're filter feeders. So this sponge takes water in through the sides, through these holes, and then squeezes it out the top, and as the water goes through, it gets bits of food out of it. Most of these sponges are called sessile. They sort of attach to a surface and stay there. They don't move around at all. They come in lots of shapes, sizes, colors. These are all different types of sponges. And you know, you've probably seen this type before. You can buy like the bath store, like a loofah, a sponge you might use in the shower or something that looks like this. It's actually used, if you have one of those, it used to be a living animal. It's just its skeleton that's left over is what you buy from the store and wash with. If you ever had like a hermit crab, sometimes in the hermit crab little cage they put like a little sponge in there that you keep moistened with water. That's usually one of these sponges as well. But it was an animal. It was one time a living animal that was collected and used. So those are sponges. Obviously, those are very simple. They have asymmetry. They don't have any real pattern. You might think they're a plant if you didn't know much about them. Next one is familiar probably to many of you, the Cnidarian phylum. This includes jellyfish, coral, sea anemones, and one that we'll look at called a hydra. This is a hydra. We'll probably, I ordered them today, they should be here maybe tomorrow for us to look at. And a hydra is a little cnidarian, it's very, very small, but it grows on this kind of stalk, and at the top are the tentacles. And the tentacles of cnidarians have stinging cells in them. They're called nematocysts. And what happens is they're in these tentacles, and they kind of shoot out and pierce into their prey and stun it, paralyze it, and then the cnidarian can then eat that food. If you've ever been stung by a jellyfish when you're at the beach, it's because the tentacles, the nematocysts in those tentacles, stuck into your skin and it hurts, it burns. They irritate your skin, they burn it. Avery?
How big are
The hydra or just jellyfish in general? These hydra are small, just a few millimeters big.
Are we gonna get to touch them?
You could touch them, they're so small they would never sting you, they,
Could you feel it?
no.
Oh.
Have you? Sorry,
Yeah.
but there are jellyfish, obviously, there are cnidarians that can sting you.
Whoa.
And has anyone ever been stung by a jellyfish?
No.
Does it hurt? I had never have really.
Well, I
Yeah,
feel like I've stepped one, kind of.
okay. But jellyfish are, float through the water. They have the jelly part of the medusa, it's called, is where their mouth is. And they have tentacles usually that hang down. They swim through the water using jet propulsion. And they catch little bits of food, little animals, sting them with their tentacles and put them in their mouth. Some of the time they can sting a person. If you're swimming in the water and there's a jellyfish, and one of those tentacles wraps around your arm, it's going to sting you.
Does it keep?
Let me tell you, what is not the way to help take away the sting?
Putting it back in the water.
No.
Take
No,
it out.
people say you should do it if you get stung by a jellyfish. Graceland? Yeah, people say you should pee on it.
Ew.
And if you've ever heard that, it's actually not true. When I was a kid, my friend, we were in Florida together, and he got stung by a jellyfish, and his brother peed on him. 'Cause he thought that was gonna make the sting go away. It actually doesn't though. But if you're in an area with a lot of jellyfish, usually at the lifeguard station, they'll have a spray bottle with some mild vinegar. The acid in the vinegar will help relieve the stinging. And you're supposed to because what happens is the tentacle sends these nematocysts into your skin, they're like poking into you. And you're supposed to scrape them out with like a piece of plastic or a credit card or something to remove them from your skin. Because if you just grab the tentacle off, then the nematocysts will still be, they break off and they'll still be in your skin. And still,
What's the chance that you're ever gonna have a credit card with you when you're in the water?
well, if you're with somebody or if your parents have their wallet on the beach or something, or you use a piece of plastic or a stick or something. A sea anemone, you know, if you ever saw Finding Nemo, he lives in a sea anemone. Nemo's a clownfish.
I know.
They have an interesting ability in that they can swim in the tentacles of the sea anemone and they don't get stung by them. So they can live in there, and actually the tentacles help keep predators away. So they're actually sort of safe in there because no predators want to go in the sea anemone because they'll get stung. Some types of crabs actually will take sea anemones like this and put them on their back so that predators are less likely to eat that crab because it's got some sea anemone stuck to its back.
Question.
Are you gonna go see Finding Dory?
I am.
I'm not
Finding Dory.
either. Here are some other examples of jellyfish. They can grow very, very large, larger than a person. You know, we saw in that video we watched the other day that
Right, that's what I
fried egg jellyfish was a real big one. Some of them have very strong toxins in their nematocysts that could sting a person, even paralyze or sometimes even kill a person. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Echinoderms. The name itself means spiny skin. Derm, like a dermatologist, is a doctor that helps with skin problems. So the name means spiny skin. These are things like a sand dollar. Have you ever seen one of these? You could go to the shell store and buy one and they're all white. But they actually are a living animal before they were collected. They're an echinoderm. This is sort of their skeleton, the part you collect as a shell. And they have radial symmetry. So you can see they're organized like spokes of a wheel. And on the bottom of this sand dollar has tiny little feet called tube feet that it uses to move around. The sand dollars are filter feeders. They take in water and filter out bits of food. Others, like the starfish, they have the same kind of tube feet, but they actually eat little animals and stuff. You saw in that video the starfish were eating the dead seal. Interesting thing about the starfish, do you see this little darker red part in the middle? The central disc. If you were to cut this starfish up into pieces, any piece of the starfish that has a little bit of that central disc will regenerate and grow into a new starfish. So you could chop it up and then it would grow into 5 new starfishes after a little. Not immediately, a period of weeks or months.
Wait, so the whole thing up.
If you broke it into if you split it down the middle, yeah, each half would grow a new half.
Now I'm talking about split the whole thing, chop it all up.
any part that has some of the middle area would grow
Some of
into
the
new
red.
starfish. Like if you just cut this tip off here, it wouldn't grow into new starfish.
What if
Have
you
you-
chop?
Could we watch a video of some
Of what? At some point. I used to have a video in the notes of it moving, because it moves like in a circular pattern skimming over the
Isn't
sand.
it slow?
Yeah, it's not very
Well,
fast.
those things I know.
This is a sea urchin. They have these spikes coming out of them. You know, you see them washed up on the shore sometimes. Often after they die, the spikes kind of fall off, and you could find a little ball that's left in the middle, and you could see where the spikes were attached. They hurt if you step on them, but it's again another echinoderm.
Do people eat those in that show, like when you're stranded in the?
Yeah, if you go to like a sushi restaurant, often you get sea urchin eggs as a food. Yep.
I
Davis?
went to Cuba Islands and I saw one of the
Sand dollar?
Yeah.
Moving around?
Like I don't know what we were doing. I was like little. Me and my dad were playing in the sandcastle. We found one, but it just kept digging through the sand.
Oh yes, growing in the
Bye.
soil. Yeah. Yeah, you see it, and when once they die, like they turn white, and then people like sell them at like a shelf store or something. All right, our last slide for today will be about worms, and there's lots to talk about with worms. Worms are really interesting. There's actually 3 phylum of worms. We're not going to really split them up, but there's segmented worms. They're called annelids. Like an earthworm is a segmented worm. If you imagine its body is broken up into those sections. And earthworms are very important for the soil. Do you know how they help the soil?
They
One way is by burrowing into the soil and digging tunnels through it. They allow oxygen to get into the roots of plants. Another way is, what do earthworms eat?
Grass.
Not so much grass, but like little dead bits of organic matter that's in the soil, like dead leaves and stuff. And then when they go to the bathroom, their waste actually acts as a fertilizer for the soil. And actually their waste, you probably have seen before and didn't really know what it is. If like you're playing outside, or you're looking on the lawn or in the soil, and you see like little clumps of like light brown, looks like you might think it's dirt, but then if you like press it, it like disintegrates. You know what I'm talking about?
No. Good.
Little clusters of stuff you make out of soil. It's actually earthworm food.
Are you kidding me?
I mean, I'll put it in his mouth.
That's good fertilizer. Yeah, I used to all the time. You get those little things and you
My
throw
friend
them
took
on
my
people.
shoe and stomped,
What?
like,
Rubbing
put my
fries on.
shoe all over the ground.
Here's another
Leech.
segmented worm.
Those
Yeah,
are
this
so
is
gross.
this is a leech. A leech is a segmented worm, and they are parasites. They feed on the blood of other animals. This side of the leech is a large sucker that just holds itself in place, and then the narrow end is the head end that kind of looks around, and once it finds a vulnerable area, will bite an animal, and then will start to digest its blood.
Oh, fun.
In its saliva, it actually has special chemicals that numb the area so it doesn't hurt as much when they bite the animal. And also their saliva has chemicals that prevent the blood from clotting so that the animal just keeps bleeding and the leech just takes in that blood. Once it gets full of blood, it detaches, rolls away, and just goes and digests all that blood. So it doesn't stay on for a long, long time. It can't kill a person by eating all their blood or an animal. It just sort of feeds for a little while and then falls off.
Could it like give you diseases?
Not that I know of.
Yes.
Not that I know of. And they're found in usually fresh water. You know, you can find them around here in ponds or streams or stuff. You ever see the movie Stand By Me, the old movie? Stand By Me? There's a scene they go in a pond and then they come out and the boys, they have leeches all over.
Oh, I
So,
like that movie.
so
I forgot the name of it.
Stand By Me.
Just say.
It was based on a
that's
Stephen
fine.
King book. Madison?
Didn't they used to use leeches like back in the really olden days to get stitches? They would like.
Well, not only did they used to, they actually still do. And we're going to watch a video reading
No, I don't.
about that. Yeah.
They put it like
Yeah. Destiny?
I was watching like Doc Garage or something, and they brought leeches in and put them on their face.
Oh yeah, some people use them like as a cure for acne. They can be used when people have a part of their body severed and they reattach like a finger. Sometimes they use leeches to relieve the pressure of blood that's building up. So we're gonna watch a video all about that.
Mr. DeRosa, And they took the leech, like squirted the blood out, and then put it all over the face again. It was disgusting, but.
All right, this is a worm that we're going to look at this week. This is a flatworm. Flatworms are in the group called Platyhelminthes. This is called a planaria. And if you cut this worm in half, each half will grow into a brand new worm. So they have this amazing ability to regenerate.
Not all of them, just
Yeah, I know.
This is not all worms, no. This is a lot of flatworms and roundworms are parasitic. And this is an example. This is what's called a heartworm. And if you have a dog at home, you may give it every month or every 3 months a tablet of HeartGuard medicine. This is a medicine that prevents your dog from getting this infection with this worm. This tapeworm, what it does, it gets into an animal's body, goes into its circulatory system, and it lives off of the blood of that animal. And it makes its way to the heart of the animal, and as it grows and reproduces, the worms multiply and build up to be so many that they clog up the chambers of the heart. So this is from an animal that died of a heartworm infection. All this white stuff looks like spaghetti. Those are worms that have completely clogged up the heart of this dog.
That's
Oh,
really
that's
sad.
gross. So is that the heart of the dog?
That's the heart of a dog, and all this white stuff are the worms in it.
Every one. Those things.
Some of these parasites affect humans. This is a parasitic worm that causes a disease called, no, that's not a worm, that's a person's foot. It's called elephantiasis. Hello?
It looks like, that does not look like a
It's
person's
still a
foot.
person's foot.
So this is a disease, it's caused by a parasitic worm. What happens is it gets inside of a person's body and it lives in their lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is what moves fluid around their body. And so it gets in their lymphatic system and clogs it. So all of their bodily fluids start to accumulate down in their lower extremities, in their feet and in their legs, and they start to swell up to these huge proportions.
What do you do after that?
If it goes so long, you can't do anything. It's hard to walk. It's painful. You get infections. You can take medications to try to destroy the worms. But so you can see a person's toes here. This is their foot just completely swollen up. They have an infection with this worm that's causing all their, body fluids to stay in their legs and not be able to get to the rest of their body again. Kind of like if you sprain, your ankle or something, your ankle swells up because fluid goes there, but then it goes to other parts of your body and the swelling goes down. Well, imagine if that fluid couldn't get back to the rest of your body, it just sort of builds up and swells. Have you all?
When you get surgery to get the worm removed.
You could take a medicine to get the worm removed, but the tissue never really returns to normal. This is a fluke. This is
After that went down, it would be all saggy.
probably. This is a free-living flatworm called a fluke. They're flat. They swim with this cool motion. They're very colorful. This is a tapeworm.
A what?
A tapeworm is another parasitic flatworm that can affect humans or other animals. Often affects dogs. And this is the head end. It attaches inside of the intestine of an animal. And then as that animal eats food, as food's moving through the digestive system, the worm absorbs some of that, and that's how it gets its nutrition. And then it grows bigger and bigger. It can reproduce, and more of these worms can build up. They can build up so much they clog the intestine that the animal or the person is not getting proper nutrition. And the way it reproduces is a little section. See how it's all these little sections? One little piece could break off and leaves the animal's digestive system when it goes to the bathroom. One time my dog, I was taking her to the backyard to go to the bathroom. She went to the bathroom, left me a little present there. But when I looked at where she pooped, on top of it was a little white thing squirming around, and I knew she had an infection. She had a tapeworm infection. That's what happened. So if another neighborhood dog came around smelling where my dog went to the bathroom, they might then ingest that little section, and then they would get the tapeworm infection. And that's
Just like by
that's how it spreads from animal to animal. One more story about that. When we got one of our dogs, she was really young. I think she was less than 6 weeks old. And so usually if you adopt a dog, they've been like 8 weeks or 10 weeks, and they got their vaccination, they got what's called dewormed. And our dog wasn't dewormed yet. Almost all puppies when they're born become infected with parasitic worms. digest worms from their mother or from other nearby dogs. And so usually before you adopt a dog, you give it a medication called a deworming medication, and that kills any of those worms. And so usually they do that at the breeder or at the vet, but we had to give it to our dog when she came home because she was so young, and I didn't really know anything about it, so we gave her the deworming pill. And then, like 12 hours later, she went outside, and she's a little chihuahua, so at that time she was only about this big. But when she went to the bathroom, there were worms, dead worms coming out that were like twice as long as she was. And it was just like a whole plate of spaghetti. Where all these worms came out whenever she went to the bathroom. That's what that deworming medication does. It clears out all those
The
worms
dogs are running.
that they got stuck in. Pretty gross.
Mr. DeRoss, I have a question.
Yeah.
You said like a puppy gets worms by their mother.
Yeah.
Or, like what if the dog's mother doesn't have worms?
They might not be, but most do. Most do somehow get infected by those worms.
So how, like, they get the deworming medication or whatever, they go infected later?
Yeah, later on they can get infected, but it's not as common as when they're puppies.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it for invertebrates. Tomorrow I'll show you the leech video.